It's Aaron Bouma here. So this is the next presentation. I'm Aaron Bouma, military specialist for Carleton County. I'm going to do this. The next presentation I'm going to do here on the World War II timeline is a contribution to the attack on Russia, to Operation Barbarossa. So this is how it all begins, and I'm going to explain from the First World War how it goes into what we know as Operation. It's going to come down to the attack and Operation Silver Fox. So Finland solidified its independence from Russia in the Finnish Civil War of January to May 1918 between the German-supported nationalists and Russian Bolshevik-supported communists in the closing stages of World War I. Tensions between the new anti-communist republic and the Soviet Union remained high during the early interwar years. Following a number of border skirmishes between Finnish nationalists and the Soviet Union in Karelia, the Treaty of Tartu settled the border of the two countries in 1920. Soviet-Finnish relations remained cool, but the two parties signed a 10-year non-aggression pact in 1932. In 1933, the Nazis came to power in Germany. The Soviet Union feared an attack by Germany and sought to secure itself against a possible German-Finnish alliance. Finland wanted to preserve its neutrality at any cost. During negotiations in 1938 and 1939, the Soviet Union demanded securities from Finland to allow intervention by the Red Army in case of a German entry into Finland. After a Finnish rejection, the Soviet Union proposed a land trade for strategic locations it deemed necessary to defend against a German invasion. Gustav Mannerheim, the chairman of Finland's Defense Council, and others favored the proposal. But the Finnish government wanted to preserve its neutrality, and the lengthy negotiations had failed. So that is the overview of certainly some of the situation that had would have been ongoing, and of course, how it comes forward. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact on the 23rd of August 1939, which the Soviet Union and Germany signed. It contained a protocol which divided Europe into spheres of influence for each country. So Finland was part of that. Finland, they agreed, would fall into the Soviet sphere. Germany subsequently invaded. The Germans subsequently invaded Poland in 1939, September 1939, and the Soviet Union invaded eastern Poland 16 days later. While, of course, with Finland still refusing the Soviet demands, the Soviet Union finally attacked Finland in 1939, which led to the Winter War. And of course, you remember the Winter War. We talked about the Winter War. I did a presentation that was one of the earliest presentations in the timeline that I've talked about. So after its defeat in March 1940, Finland had to make major territorial concessions as part of the resulting Moscow Peace Treaty. Feeling abandoned by the Western Allies, Finland started to seek help against the threat posed by the Soviet Union. Finland sought inclusion in wider Scandinavian defense cooperation, but both Soviet and German opposition prevented this. The German occupation of Denmark and Norway in April 1940 severed practical Finnish connections to countries other than the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, and Sweden. A proposed Swedish-Finnish military alliance failed due to Soviet-German pressure. Deprived of other potential sources of help, Finland started to seek closer ties with Germany to secure its position against the Soviet Union, and both sides cooperated to develop a joint policy against the Soviet Union. And this is some footage of the Winter War. The Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, OKW, the German Armed Forces High Command, included Finnish forces in its plan for the Operation Offensive in 1941 against Soviet Union, dubbed Operation Barbarossa. A Finnish-German offensive named Operation Silver Fox would support the main Axis effort directed against Central Russia from the north. Silver Fox aimed to disable the port of Murmansk, an obvious potential interput for Western Allied aid to the Soviet Union, by executing a pincer attack against the port. The following operation, of course, Operation Silver Fox, had 3 stages. Operation Rentier, was the initial advance by German forces from Norway to secure the area around Petsamo and its valuable nickel mines, which were good for resources for the German military and the German heavy industry. The follow-up operations, Operation Platinum Fox, Fuchs, from the north by Mountain Corps. Of course, by Mountain Corps Norway, and Operation, of course, Norway's operation from the Mountain Corps, Finns here and here, push up, of course, north, and try and, of course, support operations from up in that section. And then Operation Artifox, Polar Fortress, from the south by 36 Mountain Corps together with units from the Finnish 3rd Corps, aimed to cut off and capture the vital port of Murmansk afterwards in a pincer movement. Although the German-Finnish force was able to make some ground, Murmansk was neither cut off nor taken and continued to operate throughout the war. And here you can see the Soviets, the Russians here, and push them back here. The Finns and the Germans, the German pincer movements. Germans here, and so Finns attack here and here. That's 3rd Corps and beyond. So planning of this operation started in earnest in December 1940. Erich Buchenhagen, right here, that's his picture here, Chief of Staff of Army of Norway, OAK Norwegian, visited Finland and drew up a plan which would determine Finland's role in the war, which included the first draft of German-Finnish operations against the Soviet Union. On the 8th of December 1940, Hitler issued Directive Number 21, which we talked about in the last presentation, in planning of Operation Barbarossa, which detailed the campaign plan for Operation Barbarossa, including the targets for proposed German-Finnish cooperation. A detailed plan for the operation was created by Nicholas von Falkenhorst, commander of the Army of Norway, and his staff in January 1941. On February 18, 1941, the Chief of Staff of the Wehrmacht of Norway, Colonel Erich Buchenhagen, arrived in Helsinki, and the following days he had consultations with representatives of the Finnish General Staff, General Axel Friedrich Aero, and General Erich Heinrich. And that's the operation moved here. Later, Colonel Buchenhagen visited the region of Kosenmo and eastern Rovaniemi, as well as Petsamo, to reconnoiter the area. His visit ended on the 28th of February. Operation Silver Fox was planned as a 2-stage pincer movement in 3 operations. The first phase was Operation Reindeer, and I mentioned that, in which the 2 divisions of Mountain Corps Norway, the 2nd and 3rd Mountain Divisions under the leadership of Edward Deitel, were to move east from Kirkenes and to deploy in the Finnish-held area around Petsamo to secure the nickel mines. The second phase of Operation Silver Fox was to be a pincer attack against the Soviet port of Murmansk, which was ice-free in winter, and with Arkhangelsk was likely to be a destination for Western Allied suppliers to the USSR, and certainly was from the British. The British brought up supplies, and from the Lend-Lease Agreement, and even the United States later on. The first prong of the attack was to be a frontal assault against Murmansk by Mountain Corps Norway, which I talked about briefly. The two divisions were to advance east from Petsemo to take Murmansk. On their way, they were to secure Rybachy Peninsula, supported by Finnish border units. This first pincer attack was codenamed Operation Platinum Fox. The second pincer, codenamed Operation Arctic Fox, Polar Fuchs, was to be launched further south to take Sala, ceded to the Soviet Union after the Winter War, and then to proceed eastwards along the railway to capture Kalandakasha, another town, cutting the vital Murmansk railway line, which connected Murmansk with central Russia. The operation would involve the German 36th Corps under command of Hans Fisch and the Finnish 3rd Corps commanded by Hjalmar Hilsevo. Silesveo. So, um, Silesveo was in command of 3rd Corps, and of course, 3rd Corps played a critical point in this conflict, in this operation. Aerial support for the offensive was to be provided by Leftfoot 5, based in Norway, and the Finnish Air Force. For Operation Silver Fox, the Luftwaffe created a new headquarters and moved it into Finland. The Finnish Air Force fielded about 230 aircraft of various types at the start of hostilities. Luftwaffe 5 assigned 60 aircraft to Silver Fox in Finland and employed the Junkers Ju-87 and Ju-88 and Heinkel He-111 aircraft, medium bombers that we know of, that took part in the Battle of Britain and as well as taking part in here. And these aircraft were for close air support for the Finnish-German offensive. In late 1941, German units moved into Finland, in which they are here. Here they are, and this is some of the footage of them moving into Finland. Germany had secured transit rights through neutral Sweden, and the German 2nd and 3rd Mountain Divisions were moved into place at Kirkenes for Operation Reindeer. For the main body of the 36th Corps, 2 sea transport operations were arranged, Blue Fox 1 and Blue Fox 2, Blaufuchs 1 and 2. German units embarked in Stettin and Oslo for Oulu, which from where they continued via train to Rovaniemi. Once there, they joined Finnish forces and marched into position for the offensive under the guise of border defense exercises. Soviet preparations were meager. Although the Soviets anticipated a German invasion with possible Finnish support, Stalin did not expect a German attack along the entire border so early. The border had been fortified, but the Soviet leadership was taken by surprise. The main adversary of the German-Finnish force was the Soviet Northern Front, consisted of the 7th and 14th Armies stationed in the Arctic. They were commanded by Lieutenant General Markian Popov. On the 23rd of August of 41, the Northern Fleet was split into the Karelin Front and the Leningrad Front, commanded by Valerian Frolov and Popov respectively. Frolov remained in command of the Karelian Front until the 1st of September, where he was replaced by Roman Panin on his promotion. During the first weeks, the Axis had numerical superiority, as the Soviets only had 150,000 men stationed north of Lake Ladoga along the border. The Axis powers also proposed air superiority, as Soviet Karelia was only protected by the 1st and 55th Mixed Air Divisions, with 273 serviceable aircraft of obsolete types. So it's like the early Soviet fighter aircraft, biplanes, and whatnot. A lot of those would be the early Yak biplanes, and continuing on. This here is Commander Kommandierender General Gebirgskorps, Norwegian. Sorry, that's German. With German and Finnish officers in the northern Russian tundra, and this is in July 1941. This is Operation Arctic Fox and Silver Fox. This is Commander Dietl, commander of the German operations. So in the 29th of June 1941, Dietl was placed in command of Operation Silver Fox, Silberfuchs, a joint German and Finnish military operation planning during the Second World War. This was during July, planning in June, July, and then onward in and then July 1st onward, it continued this operation up into it forward into September and then October 1941. Though it was mainly operated and engaged by the Germans, its main goal was to capture, of course, the Murmansk and forward attacks deeper into northern Russia. So, following operations, and it talks about Platinum Fox, and then the North Operation Arctic Fox, and of course, so he was the overall commander of German forces, and that's him here. So with Rentier, Operation Reindeer launched on the operational day of Barbarossa, the first operational day, June 22nd, 1941. To coincide with the launch of Operation Barbarossa, the two divisions of Mountain Corps Norwegian, the 2nd and 3rd Mountain Divisions, moved out of Kirkenes and began deploying in the Finnish-held area around Petsamo. The operation was successful, the appearance of the German corps on their border coming as a surprise to the Russians. Dietl's troops reformed and prepared for the launch of Platinum Foxes, so that would be Platinum Fox. In the south, the units of Fige's 36th Corps prepared for their attack. On 25th of June 1941, Finland entered the war fully, leaving the way clear for Silver Fox to commence overall. And this is Dietl again here in his top of some of his field operators and majors and all the way up to captains and commissioned officers. Platinum Fox operations began on June 29th. Dietl launched his attack together with Finnish border units towards the east. They were opposed by two Soviet divisions of the 14th Army, namely the 14th and 52nd Rifle Divisions. On the first day, the initial advance of Dietl's forces looked promising. The 2nd Mountain Division was able to secure the neck of Rebaki Peninsula, while the 3rd Mountain Division was able to penetrate the Soviet lines at the Titovka Valley, capturing a bridge over the river. After the element of surprise was lost, the German offensive got bogged down as they faced increasingly organized Soviet defenses in difficult surroundings. The rough terrain, the lack of maps, and the Arctic weather slowed the Germans down for the entirety of the offensive. Against heavy Soviet resistance, the 2nd Mountain Division could not penetrate the Soviet defenses of the Rebaki Peninsula further, and had gone into defensive positions at its neck by July. Some of its units were sent south to aid the 3rd Mountain Division. With the additional forces, the Germans were able to advance further east against heavy resistance and reached the Letsa River, where they established a bridgehead over the river. Here the Soviets were able to halt the German advance. An attempt by Dietl's forces to expand the bridgehead toward the east failed when the Soviets launched a flanking attack by land further north on the German side, threatening the German positions. Dietl asked for further reinforcements, but the German High Command was unwilling to grant any further units. Dietl received only marginal reinforcements from Norway. While Dietl's forces and units were halted by heavy Soviet resistance, the supply situation for Mountain Corps Norway deteriorated rapidly. Soviet and British naval forces harassed German supply shipments along the Norwegian coast, weakening the Germans further. Any attempt to renew the offensive failed. Instead, the Soviets were able to clear the German bridgehead east of the Letsa River, and on 21st September the operation came to a halt. Mountain Corps Norway was now ordered to defend the front line and secure Pitsomo area and its nickel mines, as a renewed offensive was ruled out. Both sides now dug in at their current positions. For the remainder of the war, the Northern Front was to remain relatively stable until the Soviet offensive of 1944, with only small-scale ski patrol skirmishes occurring. In early September, constant attacks by Soviet submarines and British surface ships, consisting of a force of 2 aircraft carriers, 2 cruisers, and 6 destroyers, also sank numerous German ships and worsening the supply situation even more. For this reason, von Falkenhorst prohibited German shipping from sailing east of the North Cape on September 13, 1941. Hitler again pressured to continue the offensive, but Daethl made it clear that with the dire supply situation and without further reinforcements, no further advance was possible. On the 19th of September, the Germans retreated from their bridgehead east of the Litsa River. More Soviet reinforcements arrived in the area, and on the 21st September, the German offensive had broken off. Mountain Corps Norway was ordered to now defend the front line and secure the Pitsomo area and its nickel mines, as a renewed offensive was ruled out, in which I did explain this earlier. In mid-October, the 2nd Mountain Division withdrew to Pitsomo, and the 6th Mountain Division replaced the 3rd Mountain Division along the Litsa line. The 3rd Mountain Division was then moved back to Germany in December. During the winter of 1941, the Soviets launched several heavy attacks on the Litsa as well as the Rebaki Peninsula front. The dug-in German units were able to hold out, cementing the front line for the next 2 years, and that's until 1944 when the Soviet offensive came fully into play. These are some of the pictures of that offensive. German heavy guns in position, infantry moving in. The map of the overall of the operation. Arctic Fox down to here, and of course Arctic Fox, and then beginning, of course, Silver Fox here. The Norwegians. German forces. So German forces here, and Finnish forces. The Finnish forces here, and the German forces here. Command Norway. Soviet forces here. For anybody that doesn't know the symbols, so the X itself is infantry. Those are infantry units. The X, the symbol of the X with the centerpiece in there is mountain. What they call those are the symbol of Mountain Corps, mountain troops. And those are the Mountain Corps you can see in here in numerous small areas. And then you have the box with the circle or rectangular circle in it represents armor. Okay, armor. That's where armor is. Those are armored units, tanks, mechanized forces. So those are where those ones are. Operation Platinum Fox was a German failure. That is certainly true. Although Daethl was able to make some ground, his insufficient forces were soon stopped by the Soviets. The presence of British-Soviet naval forces at the Barents Sea hampered German efforts to adequately supply his forces, and the general unwillingness of the German High Command to reinforce something which they considered as a secondary theater paved the way for the only successful Soviet resistance in the early stages of Operation Barbarossa. So up north, they were stronger than they were instead of and that was the only case because the Germans were really hitting them hard with Army Group Center and Army Group South. The failure of Platoon forces had a major impact on the course of the war in the East. Over the course of the war, the Soviet Union received approximately a quarter of its Lend-Lease supplies through the port of Murmansk. And they really dropped the ball on that one, the Germans, for sure. And the port of Arkhangelsk contributed to its continued resistance. Arkhangelsk, Arkhangelsk, Arkhangelsk certainly is still at a port today, and then of course Murmansk is still the Northern Fleet headquarters of the Russian fleet in that area. Very cold up there. Certainly in the later war, late 1941, many Germans were having massive supply problems up north, and many died. And this is, of course, going to be talked more about is the conditions up north in the Battle of Moscow, Operation Typhoon. So the siege of Moscow, certainly we'll talk more about frozen conditions, many Germans freezing to death, not having adequate supplies and clothing and gear for the Russian winter. Parallel to Platinum Fox, polar approaches started on the 1st of July. The German main force at Sala consisted of 3 divisions: the regular 169th Division, the SS Infantry Kampfgruppe Nord, and the Finnish 6th Division. They were faced by 3 divisions of the 14th Army, namely the 122nd Rifle Division and the 104th Rifle Division and the 1st Tank Division. The German units launched a frontal attack against Sala, while the Finnish 6th Division attempted a massive flanking attack behind the Soviet lines further south towards Alkerti and Kerala. The initial attack went badly, as the German troops were untrained for Arctic warfare. The SS Division, in particular, merely a former police unit, was unsuccessful in dealing with the organized Soviet defense. After repeated attacks failed, 36th Corps combined all of its forces, and with the help of a flanking attack by the Finnish 6th Division, the Soviet defenses were finally breached on 6th of July. Sala was taken on July 8th, and the Soviets started a general retreat toward Karela to the east. 36th Corps sustained a momentum. 36th Corps sustained its momentum by pursuing the fleeing troops and arrived at Kerala the next day. Kerala was protected by a heavy Soviet defense and large natural lakes around the town. This prevented any further German advance, rendering the situation into a stalemate for the remainder of the month. Meanwhile, to the south, the Finnish Third Corps launched its offensive to the east of Kuusamo to support the German advance at Sala. The goal of Third Corps was to reach Kastenga as well as Yukta in a 2-pronged attack by 2 battle groups. From there, the Corps would then advance towards Loche and Kem, more towns, and then where it would cut the Murmansk railway. The initial Finnish advance against its adversary, the 54th Rifle Division, was very successful. Third Corps moved swiftly through the Arctic forest and defeated several Soviet regiments. It advanced 64 kilometers, 40 miles to the canal between Lake Pezoro and Lake Topetsoro in just 20 days. So they pushed forward 40 miles inward. The German command of Army Group Norway was impressed with rapid Finnish advance and decided to support the Finns by moving units from the 36th Corps south to support this attack. Third Corps made a crossing of the canal and captured Kasenga on the 7th of August, while simultaneously reaching the outskirts of Utra. The Soviets now moved heavy reinforcements into the area in the form of the 88th Rifle Division. This stalled the Finnish offensive. So this whole offensive, um, Arctic Fox, it commenced on July 1st with the Finnish 6th Division crossing the frontiers at midnight. Several hours later, the 6th SS Mountain Division Nord started its frontal assault against the Soviet line. So that's how it began. And here you can take a look at the map, and this is exactly where these units, the 169th, supporting the attack against the Russian divisions here, and an SS Nord pushing in here. This is Sala, where I just mentioned, Lakola, Karlai, and the stalemate, like Alpha. And this is where it continues onward, the August encirclement. Here, the Germans are encircling here. And then here are the 6th Finnish Division, and this is July 1st, and flanking and then flanking on the 6th of July here. That was the original plan here. And of course, the 19th of August, this is the encirclement that I'm coming up to here. And the 30th of August, and which was impressing the Germans. The Finnish push forward was impressing the Germans at the time. So the 30th of August here, and this is the Soviet defense here. The Voida line, I haven't talked about that yet, but this is going into September, and then to the end of the campaign here. So this is pushing all the way from the border to here, and this is roughly, this whole area is where it stops, and then of course it doesn't really. For 2 years, it's sporadic battles back and forth in the stalemate until 44, when the Soviets really pushed the Germans out. With increasing Soviet reinforcements preventing a lot of further gains, the Finnish attack stalled up in those in different sectors after Yukta. And then with increasing Soviet resistance, a plan was made to concentrate on only one target. It was decided to halt the town of Ukta offensive and instead support the advance east of Kastenga in mid-August. This new drive was able to make some ground into Arctic no man's land, but no decisive breakthrough could be achieved. The increasing Soviet activity also worried Silas Vuo, the commander of of operations of the Finnish. That's the Finnish commander of the Finnish forces, especially as Group F was now standing still in exposed terrain, open to a possible Soviet encirclement. To counter this, AOK Norwegian decided to bolster the Finnish forces for a final push to the east, and the rest of the SS Nord Division was moved south and put under Finnish command. Also, parts of the 6th Finnish Division were now moved south and returned to the Finnish 3rd Corps for more reinforcements. Once the reorganization had been completed, a new final attack had to be launched by both Finnish battle groups in October. Concurrently to these advances, a Finnish Jaeger battalion was inserted into the largely unoccupied 140-kilometer area between the Murmansk and Kandaleshka directions of the advance, and was able to cut the sole railway line connecting Kandaleshka with forward Soviet positions at the Naim station. So this is nearing Murmansk. And this is Kandaleshka right here. And this is their advance. This meant that for 2 weeks, the Soviet 122nd Rifle Division did not receive any supplies and had to live off its field dumps So of course, I mean, they were just hanging on for dear life. But of course, um, this was the renewed attack against the Soviet railway lines. Some pictures of Dato and some of the troops here and here, German and Finnish forces. This is from I think it was a Finnish or a Russian movie featuring some of the Operation Silver Fox and the invasion. I don't know how many years old it is. It's during Operation Arctic Fox, the Germans and Finns were able to make some ground and took Sala as well as Kastenga, but overall the operation failed in terms of its strategic goals, as neither Murmansk nor the railway at Kandaleska were captured. They weren't captured, even though they did some damage. The 36th Corps was unsuited, ill-trained, and unprepared for Arctic warfare, and therefore made small progress while suffering heavy casualties. The Finnish units, especially the 6th Division of the 3rd Finnish Corps, made good progress and inflicted heavy casualties on the Soviet forces. But due to the limited resources and an overstretched front line, the Finnish commander, Silasevo, ordered to not proceed with the offensive, possibly after the consultation with Commander Mannerheim, not to get too deeply involved in Germany's war. So, with to the north, the 36th Corps renewed its offensive at Karlay in mid-August. A large pincer movement by the 169th Division from the north and the Finnish 6th Division from the south encircled the city of Karlay, and they trapped a large formation of Soviet formations inside. After clearing the perimeter, the 36th Corps advanced further to the east. It took Alakurti and reached the Voita and Verman rivers, where the old 1939 Soviet border fortifications were situated. Against heavy Soviet resistance, the exhausted troops of the 36th Corps could not advance. With the German High Command moving units from 36th Corps to the south to bolster 3rd Corps and their advance, Feig's Corps did not continue offensive efforts and went onto the defensive at the end of September. Bolstered by the new German arrivals, the Finnish Third Corps launched its final offensive on October 30th. The Soviets had achieved their defenses. The Soviets had increased their defenses and had moved in additional units from other locations, and they were successful a lot more doing so than in the south. Nevertheless, Finnish forces took some ground and encircled an entire Soviet regiment. Suddenly, on 17th of November, the Finnish command ordered an end to the offensive despite positive feedback from the field commanders that further ground could be taken. The reason for this sudden change in Finnish behavior was the result of diplomatic pressure by the United States prior to the cancellation of the offensive. U.S. diplomats warned Finland that the disruption of U.S. deliveries to the Soviet Union would have serious consequences for Finland. Therefore, Finland became no longer interested in spearheading the offensive. With the Finnish refusal to be involved in the offensive itself, Arctic Fox came to an end in November, and both sides dug in at the end at their current positions. Operation Silver Fox had not achieved its sophisticated goals. During the operation, the Germans and Finns had taken some ground at both fronts, but overall the operation failed in terms of its strategic intentions, as neither Murmansk nor the Murmansk Railway at Kandaleshka were captured. The closest the German-Finnish force came to disrupting the Murmansk Railway was east of Kastenga, where they were about 30 kilometers away from it, while Dietl's force in the north did not even come close to approaching Murmansk. The German forces, especially the SS troops, were unsuited, ill-trained, and unprepared for Arctic warfare, and therefore made little progress while suffering heavy casualties. On the other hand, Finnish units, especially the 6th Division of the 3rd Finnish Corps, made good progress and inflicted heavy casualties on the Soviet forces. But the failure of Silver Fox had a significant impact on the course of the war in the east. Murmansk was a major base, of course, and many supplies came through, together with Arkhangelsk and which the main destination for Allied shipping to the Soviet Union. That together with Murmansk, Arkhangelsk was certainly a major port which they failed to disrupt. The British convoys had been traveling to Murmansk since the summer at the onset of the Soviet-German War, and with the entry of the United States into the war in December 1941, the influx of Western Allied aid increased massively. The United States enacted the Lend-Lease Pact, which I've talked about, in which they vowed to supply the Soviet Union with large quantities of food, oil, and war material. 1/4 of that aid went to Murmansk. These include large amounts of raw materials such as aluminum, as well as large quantities of manufactured goods. 5,218 tanks, M4 Sherman battle tanks, 7,411 aircraft, nearly 5,080 tank guns, nearly 500 million rounds of ammunition, and various sea vessels. Nearly 500 million rounds of ammunition, and then various sea vessels. Amazing. Those supplies benefited the Soviets significantly and contributed to their resistance. For the remainder of the war, the Arctic Front remained stable. With the German High Command did not regard it as an important theater and therefore refrained from transferring the substantial reinforcements needed for a renewal of the offensive. The Finns likewise were not interested in continuing the offensive on their own, as they did not want to antagonize the Western Allies further. And of course, in September 44, following a series of devastating German and Finnish defeats, the Finns sued for peace with the Soviet Union, and that was in 1944. Out of the casualties of Operation Silver Fox, 21,501 Germans lost their lives. 5,000 Finns also died. Those casualties figures are vary from source to source. This war, of course, Operation Silver Fox, starting with that, it's also known because it continues on in sporadic fighting, and of course, even during Operation Barbarossa. Um, it's also known as the Second Soviet-Finnish War. The first one being the Winter War in 39 to 40. The Second Soviet-Finnish War is also what it's called. It's also called the Continuation War. And this is fought, of course, this whole conflict goes on until 1944 against the Soviet Union, and of course, Finland being on the side of Nazi Germany. Um, Early in this, I'm still trying to find the figures, and I know of course, the casualties with the Finnish and the German side, but as far as this early operation, um, and early, going into from mid to late 41, um, I could not estimate the Soviet casualties. Um, but I'm assuming that it's in the thousands, in the 3, 4 thousand, or maybe tens of thousands. But it is not. The numbers I have been looking. Certainly, I don't have the actual numbers of the dead, of the Soviet dead, for Operation Silver Fox, um, but of course, with the continuation war going up through to 1944, the Soviet dead are up to over 300,000 dead or missing. So up in that sector, and 63,200 Finnish dead or missing, and the Germans 84,000 casualties total for that through 1944. But going back to 1941, it is believed that the Soviets took some heavy casualties, even though they were not fully trained and ready to force the Germans back initially, but they did. They did actually were a heck of a lot more successful at Murmansk and Kantolasky, um, and up in those areas, they were actually able to push the Germans and the Finnish back. They were able to, even though considering they did take a number of casualties, yes, probably heavy casualties. The number of direct Soviet dead is not known initially, to what I can see, or I've not found it yet. What is known is that 36 Corps, the Germans lost 9,463 casualties, men, and the Soviets, and that's in Arctic Fox. This is Operation Arctic Fox. In Operation Arctic Fox, that's what they had lost, and then of course over some 26,000 dead in overall operation at Silver Fox. And the Soviets took heavy casualties. So the exact number is not really known, but those figures will continue to climb, of course. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Aaron Bouma, military specialist for Carleton County. That concludes this presentation.